Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Today's warehouse needs to keep inventory moving smoothly and quickly. Meet these challenges with on-demand warehouse labeling from Brother Mobile Solutions. Our mobile and industrial printers will help optimize your operations to achieve the speed, reliability, and durability your warehouse needs. With easy integration for existing warehouse technology, convenient portability, and upfront affordability, Brother Mobile Solutions is at your side when it comes to warehouse labeling. Try one for free today by visiting brothermobilesolutions.com/new warehouse or click the link in the show notes. That's brothermobilesolutions.com/new warehouse to try one for free today.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am joined by Laura Ritchey. She is Executive Vice President and COO at Radial. And Radial is providing e-commerce fulfillment services for multiple brands with a very large footprint. And we're going to hear more about Radial on today's show. And we're also going to talk a little bit about Laura's background and her experience working for brands and now kind of serving those brands through Radial, and also a little bit about what she's seeing on the fulfillment side, especially e-commerce fulfillment side in today's market, how some of the trends are evolving in supply chain, and also how kind of automation and robotics is coming into play for them at Radial, and a little bit, of course, about the future of fulfillment too. So, Laura, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm good, Kevin. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about these topics.
Definitely. I'm excited to have you on. We haven't had Radial on before, so this is good to be hearing from you guys and learning as well. And we have a lot of like solution providers and things that come on, but it's always good to hear from people that are actually doing some of the shipping and things like that and what's really going on out there in the market. So for people that maybe are not familiar with Radial, why don't you give us kind of a brief overview? What is it that Radial does?
Radial provides e-commerce logistics solutions, as you highlighted. And what that really means is from the time that a customer is placing that order on the website, we're able to support that experience. So orders will drop into our order management system. They'll be received by our warehouse where we will pick, pack, and ship. We're able to provide information updates to that customer throughout that process, as well as arrange for the transportation. And for some of our clients, we also provide the customer care solutions. So the post-purchase experience, in case they have questions, they wonder where their order is, or they need any help with what they ordered. So sort of that end-to-end for the e-commerce once you've placed that order with the web store.
All right. Very interesting and definitely very much needed in the ever-growing D2C e-commerce space. Definitely need those services. And now, do you guys focus on any like a specific type of products within the e-commerce space or any specific type of brands or is it just kind of across the board?
Yeah, so our verticals are primarily going to be apparel, health and beauty, supplements, nutritional supplements, so more in the soft lines than in the hard lines. But that continues to evolve over time as more D2C or direct-to-consumer brands are launching. So we're always interested to hear what those products are and how Radial might be able to support them.
Okay. All right. Very interesting. I'm curious about that because I know a lot of fulfillment services and 3PLs and things of that nature, you tend to focus in on something specific. But I was curious, since you guys are so large with such a large footprint, what the focus is there. So now your background in it, I think it's pretty interesting because you spent your time essentially kind of being the brand, I think in the career, probably the one searching for fulfillment services, right? And now you're with Radial, obviously now serving the brand. So tell us a little bit about kind of your background and some of the experiences that you've had working for those brands and how that's kind of led you over to maybe the other side of the fence, I guess you could say in this case, right?
Absolutely. If you think about it, it's similar activities that are taking place. It's sort of the chair you sit in. So when I started with the brands, and I worked a long time at L Brands, who owns Bath and Body Works and Victoria's Secret, and those have since now split into separate companies, you really learn what the customer is focused on, right? So those branded companies, everything is driven by the end consumer. You spend time in stores, you get to know that consumer. So whether you're the person that's receiving the product on the dock in the warehouse, you understand that commitment and what role you play. And that's sort of been my journey before Radial, was really working for those branded companies focused on that customer experience. But the actual activities that you have to do, the pick, pack, and ship, making sure that you follow up on the post-purchase experience, are very similar. So the skill set is relatively portable. What I like about my role at Radial is that I can bring kind of that customer or brand view into the business so that our teams really operate as an extension of that brand or retailer, because we have that same passion to delight the end consumer as well as to provide the services that we've agreed upon with our clients. And so that it's been a great journey for me. Now in this chair, I get to work with many, many brands all at one time across many verticals. And I like that challenge as part of this opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And I think it's great too that you're able to get that perspective from the brand side, and then now take that experience and understand, I'm sure, what your expectations were on the brand side, and now deliver that to other brands. And like you said, multiple brands you get to work with, which I'm sure is a great experience and never dull. I'm sure always interesting, new experiences, right? And I'm curious too. I mean, it's almost, if you look at your position now at Radial, I mean, you almost have two customers in a sense, right? You have the brand that you need to satisfy, but then you mentioned also the end consumer as well. So talk to us about the kind of the importance of that relationship all the way through. How do you work with the brand, but then also kind of serve that end consumer too?
Absolutely. I always talk about it kind of in a triangle, right, of quality, cost, and service. So if you think about the end consumer, they're going to be focused on how much do they have to pay for the product? What do they have to pay for shipping? They're going to want the product to arrive looking beautifully, however that brand presents it to them. And they're going to want that to be delivered on the timeline that they expect. It's really not going to be any different expectations for the client, other than the client has a piece of the cost equation that's kind of different. So when we speak about it internally, the differentiation for me is all about aligning on expectations. So what is that client looking for from the customer experience? How are we delivering that customer experience? And then what do we think the customer is expecting as well? So when you think about it on those three dimensions, it's really just, again, kind of, I mentioned the chair you sit in, but it doesn't really change the fact that those are the three primary variables.
Very interesting. Yeah. And I think it puts you in a unique position too, as yourself and Radial in general, to be able to see kind of the full spectrum on what's going on in e-commerce and just the market in general, what brands are looking for and what brands expectations are, but then also ultimately the end consumer too, and how both of those kind of drive, the way the market is going. So talk to us a little bit about, what are you seeing right now in the e-commerce market, specifically from a supply chain perspective? I mean, are you seeing where, there's higher demand for faster delivery, or is it more important to consumers on, visibility? I mean, what really are kind of the big things that people are concerned about right now and very interested in making sure are right?
We'll be back after a quick break. You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
That's a great question. And I think the debate around speed versus cost is probably the primary topic right now. So I just saw an article where somebody predicted that now cost is trumping speed because of the macroeconomic conditions, and the inflation in the transportation rates and the cost of labor are all driving those costs up. I've seen the survey that Radial did around the holiday last year, where we said that people's expectations are kind of returning to that 2 and 3 day delivery. So really what we suggest is ask your customers what they want. What we have found lately is that we've had clients coming back to us and say, we thought we had to be 2 day, we thought we had to be 1 day to compete with other providers or with other sellers out in the market. But what we are really finding is that transparency and visibility. You know, I just had an experience where I purchased from a retailer. I purchased 8 items. They sent 2 from a store, and I had great visibility. I saw where they were, when they were coming, when they were going to be delivered. Somehow the other 6 went into a bit of a black hole. So I'm pleased to say they showed up yesterday. But, you know, for the past week or so, I haven't really been sure where they are. And so if you think about, I didn't really need those items, you know, by yesterday or by the 4 or 5 days ago when I got the first 2, but I would feel better as a consumer if I at least knew where they were and when they were coming. And so especially for people now that are using their stores for fulfillment, their warehouses for fulfillment, it's really important that consumer experience is unified so that it's invisible to me as a customer. I just want to know, when am I getting it, and you know, and to be certain that it's actually coming then.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because even too, I mean, I think, you know, I've experienced the same thing, like split shipments, you know, getting something on tomorrow and then the next thing comes 3 or 4 days later, and then having that lack of visibility too. And sometimes I think too, like, you know, we order so much stuff online, like sometimes it's like, if you don't have that visibility, like you don't think about it until like a week later, and you're like, oh my God, I never got that thing. Like, is it still coming, or what's going on? So I'm curious, you know, because of that, and you touched on too, how, you know, things are now being fulfilled from stores and different locations, like many different types of channels to kind of get these e-commerce products into the consumer's hand. And now from Radial's perspective, I mean, how do you make sure that on your end, you're doing primarily from fulfillment centers, correct? So, you know, how do you make sure that you're marrying up and making sure that that kind of consumer experience is streamlined throughout, and you're matching up with, say, the store fulfillment as well?
So we really need to use technology, right? At the end of the day, that's what's going to unify it. So we have an order management system, so we can actually have people buy online. We can send that order to the store to be fulfilled, and we'll have visibility to that. We can send it to our warehouse to be fulfilled. We can even send it to another third-party warehouse. And so it kind of starts with understanding how the order is going to be sent to whatever location best fulfills it, right? And that's all usually done on a rules base. So if I order 5 things, it's going to look for the place that's closest to my zip code, and it's going to look for the place that has the most inventory available to complete my order. So it starts with that. But then the retailers and brands can actually set their own rules around how frequently do I want to interact with the customers. I think a lot of us are used to maybe order placed, order shipped. Now what you see is order placed, order work in process in the warehouse, order shipped, order in transit, order delivered. So it's also around that frequency of communication that really helps set the consumer expectation. And you see more people opting into text updates, right, about where my order is. And then once you have that permission, that actually gives you further marketing permissions with that person. So there's a lot around using your order management system, providing those right updates around order visibility, and then using that to stay connected with that customer to create that brand loyalty and drive future purchases.
Yeah, I think that's such a great thing, and I love the extra visibility when it's there from a brand. Absolutely. I mean, I think even actually it's funny because I know I've worked in warehousing, and it's been my career, and I could see further into tracking. I remember one time talking to somebody in customer service, and I'm like, I don't think this has not shipped yet. And she's like, oh no, it says the label has been created on tracking, and I'm like, yeah, I know what that means. It has not left the building yet. And that was 5 days ago, right? So I think it's great to be able to have that visibility, and like you said, for the brand too, it creates that additional touch points to be able to help with the marketing and really kind of almost develop more of a relationship with the customer, right, in a sense. And you see a lot of kind of creative marketing campaigns through text message and things like that, and carrying on, with those touch points, bringing some value and saying oh, this is where your package is, but then also hey, you want to add something on, there's 10% off or something like that, right? So it really makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious, from when you guys are talking to a potential brand that could be a client, I mean, how are you able to leverage the tech that you have and those experiences of knowing that, from telling them okay, this is the benefit that Radial is going to add, versus whether you were going to continue to do fulfillment on your own, or how are you able to kind of take that brand and give them another competitive advantage?
Absolutely. It really all starts with the integration. If I think back to when I started in this business, we probably traded 3 or 4 data points, and maybe that happened once or twice a day. If you think about today, we're probably sending inventory updates hourly so that the available to promise, or what's available to the customer, is updated on the website much more real time than it used to be. We're transmitting activities, updates around the order. So instead of waiting till the end of the day to say what's been shipped for the day, you'll see that transmitted more frequently. So there's really has to be a level of integration, and that integration actually has to be with whatever their web store technology is, whatever their enterprise planning system is, right, or their ERP, and then our systems, to make sure that all of that data gets to the right places and that it's triggering the right notifications to the customer. Because to your point, we all know labeled created means hopefully somebody in the warehouse is working on it so that it can get manifested and shipped. And so it's really important that as we think about doing our work, we know what our systems are triggering as alerts to the client, and then that retailer or brand providing those on to the customer. So for us, we always start the conversations with making sure that we have the right integrations, helping them to understand if they're going to be fulfilling from multiple locations, that they need that complexity of order management system to take into kind of those cost, quality, and service metrics that I spoke about earlier. And then really also now going into analytics and being predictive. And so we can also provide data around what's high velocity SKUs. Are we seeing any patterns? If we manage customer care and the post-purchase experience, we can provide qualitative feedback to that brand and retailer about the things that we're hearing while we're on the phone with those end customers. So it's really about those different integration points and that data that we can give back to the retailer so that they can manage the business even more effectively around future products or inventory and all of those metrics.
Very interesting. And I think that's such a great thing too, because I mean, you see so many, and I'm sure you guys see it all the time, e-commerce brands or D2C brands that are, kind of an idea somebody has and they come up with this product, and, most likely they have really no supply chain knowledge at all. And they're trying to figure out how to fulfill orders on their own. And it would take them so much longer to be able to get to that point, to have that kind of visibility that you guys are offering and that you mentioned there. I mean, I think, So, I mean, in that regard, for, a brand that is kind of growing and, utilizing e-commerce, I mean, at what point would you say, or does Radial kind of say like, hey, like, it's time to stop, shipping from the garage or wherever, and, like come to a partner like Radial?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it really comes down to thinking about your maturity cycle of your business. So when you're emerging and you're able have a lower complexity of products available, you might perhaps not be serving nationally at that point, or you might not be working already in the wholesale arena.
Mm.
Then those are times where typically people can start either with out of their garage or with a maybe more local provider.
Yeah.
When you start to think about adding complexity of SKU count, so particularly in apparel, when you add color and sizes to your product range, that increases complexity. When you want to think about having more national coverage and availability, if you're going to engage in maybe a wholesale relationship with one of the bigger retailers for distribution, those are all areas that add complexity to the business that really distracts a lot of these founders or inventors from focusing on the product and the merchandising and the marketing, and tells you probably it's time to get some expertise from a third-party provider like Radial.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And I hear that a lot. It's, you need to be focused on what you're good at, and then bring in the right partners to be able to take care of everything else, right? And I think that makes a lot of sense. So we've kind of talked a lot about the e-commerce market here, and from the brand perspective, and how Radial helps the brand, and things of that nature. But this is the New Warehouse podcast, right? So we have a lot of shippers that are listening too. So let's talk from the shipper perspective, as Radial is a shipper, right? I mean, how do you kind of, and how is Radial going about kind of optimizing your fulfillment, and what are you really looking at in terms of the tech world, and going about and approaching different types of technology, whether it's automation, robotic systems that are out there now and kind of exploding all over the place, so many options. I mean, how does Radial really kind of navigate that?
Sure. And I think we actually kind of start up front. So if you think about where we've come with the pandemic over the last couple of years, if I'm a brand or retailer and I'm trying to forecast my demand, what year am I using to model that demand after? Am I using 2019? Am I using 2020? Am I using 2021? So a lot of those make it difficult to kind of set a baseline, because we have our data set that would be across multiple brands, across multiple verticals. We actually can provide analytics through our predictive modeling to help even in the beginning when we're setting up, what do you think your volume is? What do you think your true peak to average is, right? So if I ship 1 on an average day, do I ship 5 on a peak day? Because it really starts with that. That's going to inform your buying behavior. It's going to inform how you receive everything into the warehouse. So you would think that it's been happening for a long time, but I think that the tools have evolved so much now that we are able to do much more effective modeling into using AI, right? Instead of probably our older algorithm based. So we've spent a lot of time focused on that, because that ultimately in the warehouse drives the staffing model. It drives the service. It's going to drive the cost to that client and that end consumer. We definitely bring automation to the table. So we use 3 different types of automation now. We use a goods to person solution. We use the robots on the floor. And then we also use a larger robotic solution that's in a tower format. So from our perspective, that again is driven by the client and what they look like. So if you have 10,000 SKUs and your average day is 10,000 units, and in peak you do 150,000 units, that's a huge jump, right? And so there's no way that you're going to be able to bring enough people into a building that fast and train them to support that, typically over a 10 to 14 day window. So in those cases, we'll look at, so what technology has the right cost benefit, right? Because if you're not using it to max all year round, you have to make sure that what you're willing to invest for that capacity. And then we match that up kind of with the client's needs. And then if you think about on the backside, then to your point, we need to think about transportation and shipping. So Radial partners with a number of carriers or last mile carriers to really deliver a bespoke transportation solution. So there may be clients who are focused on sustainability, and so they want to use a certain mode of transportation. Clients who are focused on cost and are willing to take a slightly slower speed, or clients who say, I have a higher value product and I always want to go by a day definite service. And so there's a lot of planning and technology, right, that goes into those decisions as well so that we can offer that solution. So as we think about it, it's sort of a whole automated life cycle that's developing around using predictive technology up front, automating to be more efficient and effective during the pick, pack, and ship. And then as you get to actually the movement to that end customer's home, what's the most effective way, making sure that the entire click to deliver is still within what that client has promised to that consumer on the website.
Very interesting, and definitely interested to hear that you're using AI, because I think that's such a large discussion everywhere now, right? Like, how is AI coming into the supply chain and the warehouse and all these things? And it's really interesting to hear how you're utilizing it. And I'm curious too, from whether it's the AI, automation, robotics perspective. I mean, do you have brands that are like, when they're coming to you, are they asking, like, are you using robots? Are you using AI? I mean, is that something that's top of mind for them as a need for a partner, or is that something that Radial is just investing in because it's just further optimizing your operations?
I think it's a little both. So, I mean, certainly the buzz is you need robots. So there is always the discussion of, should we have robots? And I think a lot of that is education about where it makes sense. So because we have these solutions deployed in various warehouses, we can take those clients to the warehouse, show them the benefits, show them where it makes a good use case and where it doesn't, right? So it's a pretty honest conversation that robots, of course, are cool. They're not going to be the right answer in every place. For us, the robots actually people thought would be concerning, because they would displace employees. I've had employees. One woman came up and said, "Oh, my son thinks I'm the coolest ever because I get to work with robots every day," right? Yeah. So it actually is taking away some of the more monotonous tasks, right? You don't have to walk 10 miles every day now. Maybe you could just walk 4 or 5, right? Yeah. And you're more focused on making sure that order gets done correctly. The other thing, though, that we're doing is we're really starting to use the technology to enhance the employee experience. And that helps us, if you think about my triangle, because happy employees and satisfied employees are going to give us better quality and better service metrics. So we're using it for training. We have, 28 languages spoken in our warehouse. And so the ability to deliver language and training in a native language, and then to also ensure that we're reinforcing English as a second language, is another great place where training, or where AI is really, really influencing how we do training. So the clients are almost sometimes as excited about that as they are about seeing robots, because they also, want to see a good and happy workforce delivering for their clients.
Very interesting. And I love that. Definitely. I mean, I think in my career, I've worked in warehouses and managed, several warehouse employees. And I think it's such an important thing. And I love that you've touched on that without me bringing it up. And, I would say if anybody's out there, a warehouse worker looking for a job, I would say check out Radial. I can tell already that they have a good culture just based on what you said there. So, I think it's really important to be able to leverage that tech, but also leverage that tech in a way, like you said, to make the employees happy and increase that retention and be able to keep them in there and keep them happy, like you said. And I think all around that makes so much sense in a full kind of ecosystem there, not only from the brand perspective, like you said, they're happy to see that employees are happy too, they're enjoying their work, and it's a great place to work. I think it's really, really important. So I'm curious, on that same kind of front, I mean, it sounds like you're doing a lot to try and make the employees' lives better and then help with those retention rates. But obviously, last couple of years have been a lot of discussion in our world about the labor challenges and things like that. I mean, how has Radial kind of dealt with, some of the labor shortages, increased labor cost, all those different types of things? I mean, how has Radial approached that, and what are you kind of seeing in the labor market right now?
I think what we're seeing in the labor market is availability is increasing slightly, but I would say we're still going to feel like it's constrained because the natural tendency is we're all building warehouses in the same place. Yeah. So if we're going to a new locale, guaranteed that our other friends are building there as well. And so that's creating kind of a natural constraint on labor as the warehousing industry, and you actually can read articles about it, right? As some people are happy to see it join into their neighborhood or not. So I think we'll always face that. It goes back to, for us, the same things that we would do when labor wasn't scarce, which if you don't offer a good place to work, if you don't offer opportunities for advancement, including pay and pay equity, if you don't offer opportunities to go back and get education and have that be supported by the company, a competitive benefits package. So we're really using our toolkit that we always had. It's probably more just being vocal about it and talking about, we have somebody that started as a receiving clerk that's now running one of our sites. Yeah. And having him share that with people, he literally gives me goosebumps when I say it. He literally will say, I never thought I would sit in this chair. And that's so compelling, for people that are looking for those opportunities to hear, and the fact that you can go back to school if you want, and that Radial will pay for that. So for me, it's our toolkit, but it's also making sure that our associates are aware of what's available for them.
All right. And that's such a great thing. And I love to hear stories like that of people that came from the floor. Now they're running facilities, multiple facilities, whatever the case may be. I mean, it's such a great thing because you learn so much from the floor, and then being able to take that into leadership roles and things like that just makes such the stronger organization and operationally, especially. So really great to hear all those things, and definitely very interesting how you guys are approaching everything, not only from a technology standpoint, but then also from the employee standpoint as well, employee well-being standpoint, I think is really, really important. So I'm curious, we've seen so many changes on e-commerce and the fulfillment things over the last couple of years, mostly spiked by COVID, right? Kind of changed a lot of things about everything, but e-commerce especially. And we talked a little bit about how fulfillment has changed. Some from in-store, curbside pickup, all these different types of things, right? So as you look to the next couple of years for e-commerce and fulfillment, I mean, what do you think will be the changes? What do you think is here to stay? I mean, how do you think we're going to evolve over these next couple of years?
I think that that's a really great question. I think it's going to remain about convenience, right? So if I want to have a new outfit to wear to an event on Saturday and it's Wednesday, I'm probably going to go to the store and I'm going to get it and I'm going to try it on and I'm going to make sure it fits. If instead I'm looking, for a new swimsuit and I'm going on vacation in 2 weeks, that may be something where I'm going to go online and purchase. So I think a lot of it will always continue to be driven by convenience and ease of access by the customer. I do think that we're going to continue to see e-commerce grow in the 8 to 10% range. So probably not 30 and 35 like we saw during the pandemic, and probably, not even maybe into that middle teens. But if you think about it, we still have gone in the last 5 years from e-commerce maybe being as little as 5 or 10% of a brand or retailer's business to, in some cases, 25 or even 50%. So that penetration of e-commerce is for sure here to stay. But I do think, everyone is looking for experiences now. So we have seen store commerce come back, or retail store shopping increase over this time. So it's never going to be a static. And then there's some channel, I'm sure that we don't even know what it is, that's out there at some point, and we'll be talking about it, right, at some time in the future. So I think, definitely here to stay, and it's going to be about making that customer experience, frictionless, convenient, so that they can get it. It's always been about, I remember when I started in retail, it was always like, when the customer wants it, where they want it, for the price they want it, those will be the same. It's just what those things are have really changed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And it is very interesting. And when you think about like the potential of, like you said, the channels that we are unaware of at the moment, like what could potentially be out there. I mean, I think the technology we're seeing is just going to drive so many more interesting types of things. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that evolves, and definitely, hopefully we'll be talking to you about it in the future too here on the podcast. So it's been really great to talk to you, Laura, and get all these insights from you from your perspective and from Radial's perspective too, and to learn more about Radial, and definitely really appreciate what you said about the warehouse employees and how you guys go about making their lives better, which I think is such a great thing in this industry. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. If people are interested in learning more about Radial, what's the best way to do that?
You can visit our website at radial.com. You can check me out on LinkedIn and follow me, Laura Ritchey, Radial on LinkedIn. We can always share that information. And thank you for having me, Kevin. This has been great. You can tell I have a passion for this, and it sounds like you do as too. So it's always nice to have a kindred spirit as we talk about warehousing fun. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Get two warehouse nerds together. It's a good thing, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So we'll put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well, so people can easily find it. So Laura, thank you once again for your time on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.